I just transferred the stream over. I actually don't even know if anyone watches these. But nonetheless, hello everyone, and hello if anyone is on YouTube. Pretty standard, got a couple of items that are not on every schedule, like quickly discussing key hygiene, even in the context of testnets, and I know that Ren couldn't join us, but we'll quickly talk about the API working group. I think that we had some blockers, but now have some PRs up for review. So let's go ahead and get started. Testing and release. There are a couple of minor clarifications. I've made it very clear if anything is in dev that you need to be aware of. I think there's maybe just one thing right now. There's a couple of non-substantive but clarifying and potentially optimizing PRs with respect to the fork choice that are up right now. I expect those to go into dev soon. I will make note of them to all the teams so you can take a look and probably do a release sometime in the next week or so, but again, they're not substantive. Other than that, I think that Lighthouse integrated Alex's fork choice tests. We are still going to take a look at and figuring out how to actually officially release these, but it's getting some good use out of them today. Other testing and release updates?
Sure. For testnets, I've worked on this validator tooling, which enables you to build these mass validator wallets to deploy many validators for like stress testing, or just if you want to deploy your validators to different clients easily. It's testnet tooling though, so be warned, there may be bugs, and it brings up this whole wallet debate. And I wanted to talk about how clients either they're directed towards a wallet or towards a key store. They should try and like converge in this design. And Lighthouse has some strong points to use a key store specifically instead of being wallet centric. Then I made some changes to Serenity. It will be integrated into Rumor. I'm planning to make chain tests to process many blocks. And I have some more like testnet-like testing instead of just the unit testing of the spec test. I worked on Eth2.0 which is this open source Explorer wrapping thing, so can explain the Lighthouse currently has an API that exposes some fork choice information and blocks. And this Python tooling can interpret this, process it into a database for you to analyze a whole testnet test. And I've given some power users access to this to build more statistics and figure out where if1 voting goes wrong, where forks occur, how staking performance looks like, all these kind of statistics. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Cool. So if you want to get your hands on some SQL testnet data, that proto now. Other testing updates? Ready?
Yep. Beacon fuzz update. Making some good progress on fuzzing lately. Prism now supports native Go builds, making it Go gettable. Thanks, Prism guys, for this, much appreciated. It allowed us to progress significantly in integrating them into our fuzzing framework, which already yielded 2 bugs. A panic due to out-of-band slice ranges in GoSSZ found in attestation passing, and another panic due to a nil pointer dereference found in proposal slashing processing. We also found a panic in Lighthouse's ENR crate when decoding non-UTF-8 characters, which was fixed almost immediately by Age. We've been working on integrating Lodestar as well, and we've identified 4 unique bugs, 2 type errors in the ENR library, and 2 other type errors in the block SSZ decentralization. I guess in other news, we've also been helping with some DLS fuzzing on the Eth2.0 front with the Get team. Reported a few issues there, but I guess it's not really in the scope of this call since no one here is using that particular library. But thought it was worth mentioning. We're working towards Dockerizing Eth2 fuzz, and we'll be pushing this to Docker Hub so that the community can help find bugs. And I guess speaking of Dockers, we've analyzed the OSS fuzz requirements and are pretty confident we'll be able to have our fuzzers running on the Google infrastructure very soon. That's pretty much it.
Cool. Yeah, so Google provides free fuzzing on their infrastructure?
Yep, that's right. For open source projects that are highly used and quite popular. So we might want to coordinate and submit one sort of unique request for all clients. But the Docker approach that we have is very much in line with their requirement, which is good.
Nice. Great. Cool. Thank you. Any other things on the testing front? All right. Moving on to test nets updates here. When's the Onyx Genesis? Or, sorry, after you can go. Okay. The update is Prismatic has a testnet launching, and we will talk about where the clients are with respect to getting a multi-client up. But I threw up an item here. Validator key hygiene. There's a lot here, and maybe we'll end up having to take some discussion out. But the original reason I put it up there was the practices that we're going to want validators to take. We need to start training them to do them today with respect to our testnets, rather than giving them higher requirements on, or different requirements once we reach mainnet. For example, not storing your withdrawal credentials, or even maybe generating your withdrawal credentials on the same machine that you're going to be staking on. Thinking about air gap machines, thinking about some of the trade-offs here. There are also other components of this conversation, including wallets versus key stores, how tied all your keys are together, all that kind of stuff. So the first, again, is a PSA to start shifting the docs and shifting things in the direction of favoring security rather than ease of use, even on the testnets. But does anybody want to get more into this, the key store versus wallet discussion?
Related to that, for audit proposal, we asked the auditors to give us some guidelines on secret management. So I suppose this is something very relevant as well, and maybe they are the best one to ask about do and don'ts.
Yes, absolutely. And we're actually we're talking with another security firm to do a top-down look at validating for hobbyists, which would include some key recommendations, but also include things like DOS mitigation and managing your ports well and all that kind of stuff. So there is some work, certainly some work to be done here.
Hey, Danny.
Yeah.
For Prism here, we've been thinking a lot about this, and we're currently working on a whole accounts redesign and how people deal with their keys. I think we're planning on maybe like namespacing kind of basic commands versus advanced power user commands. And yeah, I agree. Like we're gonna focus a lot on making sure users know what to do with their withdrawal credentials, where to put them. But overall, most of the feedback comes down to kind of commands are not intuitive. Like, how can I move my accounts from one computer to another? where are my keys? Like, how do I safely move them around? So we feel like there's a lot of friction there, and that would be super helpful if we can all like kind of think about that together.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Proto, can you talk a little bit more about the wallet versus key store discussion?
Right. So this discussion started when I was diving into validator key stores. How do I deploy thousands of validators for like stress test networks with all these different clients? And so this tooling I built was first geared to Smata, which is very wallet centric. What this means is that you have this option to like specify in a JSON file where to find accounts, how to what the passwords are for these accounts, and these kind of things. But it loads it from this wallet system from Eth2, which is great, but it's not really like meant for clients so much as just managing your keys outside of a client. And so how Lighthouse differs is that it's very key store centric. It loads all these validator directories, which hold these keys for the validators. And it's just a bare JSON file. No gimmicks, no clutter, no index files, no nothing. It's just a JSON file with a key, which makes deployment very easy if you can just produce the key. And the secrets are managed separately and are managed well in the sense that you have them in some file. You can protect this file from various kinds of problems. And you're very explicit about including validators or not. And it checks if new validators are included by accident. There's a lot of practices here I'd like other clients to look into for their security as well. And then I know Peku is following suit there. It's like doing similar things, except that it's looking like it will be more flattened structure. So not like one directory per validator, but more like a few files per validator in one directory. And it's more or less the same. Like my main point here is what account or what key store type you use. Carl has been working on this standard. You should ask him about this. But key being here is it can be minimal and it should be organized well. And we should try to standardize this at least to a point where we can reason about deploying key store files and managing secrets well.
Carl, do you have any follow-up on the EIPs and some of the changes coming?
Yeah, so I've got a few points. One is that I'd like to update the EIP 2333 to the new arguments, the new salts basically from the BLS standard. So that's this PR here. It should basically be a one-liner for most people implementing it. The challenge here, and that's just what I'd like to make everyone aware of and see if anyone has any strong feelings about this, and that's that EIPs aren't really meant to be versioned. So it is a bit hard to propose this, and I'm a little bit concerned about there being multiple versions out there. So if, as client teams, you all see this and it's something you agree with, then I'd like to go ahead with it, and then we can just sort of ignore the earlier version. But otherwise, I would prefer not to have a sort of fork of versions here. Then there's been quite a bit of discussion on EIP 2334, which specifies the sort of the paths and where in the tree that keys exist. Now, a lot of this discussion comes around this idea here, which is whether the sort of the path specifies that keys need to be included, and where the keys must exist, and that necessitates that the withdrawal key is the parent key of each each signing key. And the argument here is that that's a little bit too stringent because it sort of limits your possibility. But I'm not so sure I agree with the argument. So the argument is that the benefits are supposedly threefold. One is that it allows multi-party computation, as in secret shared keys. Secret shared key scheme is ever going to be able to follow a path anyway, so it doesn't really make sense for me to talk about paths if you're going to be using secret shared keys, because by definition you don't know where they exist. And then things like staking services, well, staking services, you can still use this to generate your keys. So say you want to have your withdrawal keys and the staking service is going to separately derive to you, well then your withdrawal keys are going to be yours anyway. And you can derive the path to not have or not use the signing keys. For hardware wallets, so that the one approach here would be to have two separate mnemonics, but I would argue that that just gets very confusing and increases the scope for losing keys. And so the other option would be to have hardware wallets be able to export key stores, which would be my personal preference. If this is done, then we can just agree that key stores are the standard for transferring keys, and then you can keep your withdrawal credentials in the hardware wallet. Yeah,
do any hardware wallets provide that ability at all?
No.
Yeah.
No.
It seems
they do not want to release any of the secrets inside,
right.
Which is understandable.
That's a design goal there.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm a little bit concerned because I'm not so sure if they have the power to compute the S-crypt hashing required to produce a key store.
Right.
I don't know, but there may be a limit there. Certainly, like the key stores, or the key card wallets wouldn't, but those don't work for BLS anyway.
So, help me understand. In the argument for clients not knowing or caring about wallets and instead just caring about key stores, that provides kind of maximum flexibility in how you ultimately manage your keys, right? The more you put a wallet embedded in, like wallet standards have to be embedded in a client, the more you've become, one, opinionated on how people generate their keys, and two, likely if you use this key generation where withdrawal credentials and valid signing keys are generated from the same wallets, you've now like tied the withdrawal credentials too close to the client. Are these the reasons that Proto or Carl or anybody's thinking about this, why we want clients to only think about key stores?
Yes, those are the basic ideas. It just allows a lot more flexibility and I'd argue for simplicity. Mm-hmm. Furthermore, I really don't think that clients should necessarily want to hold on to withdrawal keys.
Yeah, no, not at all.
That's just scary. And I think the fewer secrets you can hold on to as a client, the better. But I'm open to counter arguments on that point.
Okay.
I think we definitely agree here for Lighthouse. We, if you decrypt the wallet seed, you can pretty much access all possible keys from that wallet. You just derive them. It's probably not something we want.
Yeah,
you don't want that hard. Okay, so
and just to repeat, compatibility is also like this main problem. I think we'll have many clients all managing key stores. If they all have their own wallet system, it's not going to work well.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a handful of things here. One is the evolving discussion in standards, the EIP standards. Two is potentially some standards or at least common guidance on how to use keys and key stores in clients. Is there anything else? I mean, I know the first encapsulated a lot. I think that we probably need to there's a lot here to discuss. We probably need to continue the conversation in other threads and potentially get on a call and hack through this. I think we have a lot of other things to cover today. Carl, can you make sure to share any links where conversation's happening? Is there anything other than the 2 links you sent that you want people to have their eyes on?
For now, not really. One other point I'd like to bring up is what clients need in order to start up their validators. As in, do clients need access to deposit data or withdrawal keys, or is just giving it a key store enough? In theory, a key store should be sufficient, but I know some people have preferences for having more information there.
Right, meaning if I handle my deposit in a totally other place, how do I actually onboard into a client?
Yeah.
Yeah, anybody want to share?
I think Lighthouse has a neat approach where they keep a directory per validator. Then you have at least the key store file. Then optionally you have these other files for deposit data and whatnot that get generated only when you need them. And so you can start your validator with just your key store, or you can go through the deposit process with the client and keep the data together, which is why I'm like Deco is doing it slightly different with this flattened structure. There are a lot of like smaller choices in there, and I think Paul was planning to write something about his choices in Lighthouse, and we should try and discuss the design here.
Yeah. Does the key store management within the context and the key management within the context of a client, does this warrant its own standard, a doc for guidance, and EIP? Are there any opinions on where this information should be standardized? If it were to be standardized.
I think considering these other things are EIPs, I think we can have an EIP.
Yeah, okay.
For standardizing.
Maybe we should organize just a call first with the interested parties and see what they think.
Absolutely.
Focus on like the problem more before we start an EIP.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Is there any appetite? Go on.
I'd be very interested in seeing like what from a minimal operating perspective would be the absolute minimum support needed, so that we can clearly divide into things that are necessary and then things that clients might add on on top of that, this division.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, I think obviously the minimal is someone can give you a key and you can run that validator, likely in the form of an encrypted key store. And anything else is extra because you can handle them with third-party tools and other things.
Well, and secret management. Some very basic management, very low to a file would be like the very first nice to have, basically. Secret
management in the sense of how I decrypt these key stores?
Yes.
Yeah, that one's stuff.
So one other small topic on the decryption of key stores and secret management is anyone opposed to using or allowing Unicode passwords for encrypting and decrypting, assuming we use some form of normalized form?
What would be the argument against?
Because
like
Unicode is a nightmare. Yeah.
No, but like there are multiple ways to encode.
So that's why I'm suggesting a normalized form, right?
Yeah, but even those, like if you take into account the acrylics and stuff like this, very quickly gets hairy.
My understanding is there are formats which flatten all of this, or at least have one consistent implementation. Although I'm very nervous too. I just don't feel it's fair from an internationalization standpoint to not allow Unicode characters.
Are there, I mean, do password systems commonly allow Unicode characters?
Many of them don't, to avoid this problem. But the arguments for are basically normalized forms should get you around this, and it opens your key space to be much larger. So your if you want a dictionary attack, or brute force it, it becomes much more difficult.
When I log into like a standard website these days, will they let me use Unicode?
Probably not.
Not that that's our standard, but
Yeah, and like,
just so
I mean, to be fair, as far as I can tell, like even Chinese people normally just have passwords that are English letters and numbers. So I don't.
I mean, that's true, but I think for like other languages like German or so, there it would not be uncommon to allow things like umlauts or so in passwords. So I'm not so sure if it's that clear cut. And I feel like the only reasonable way to allow that is to have Unicode support.
So the the format that's used to generate mnemonics for Ethereum right now, and that's been used with all these EIPs, that you are allowed to use a password, and that password you can use Unicode characters in, for example. So it is sort of an extension of that.
Okay, we'll add this to the list.
So there is precedent in this space. But we can take this discussion further into that other channel. I would be very keen to have a call for this.
Yeah, cool. I was thinking maybe tomorrow, but maybe we want to gather ourselves a little bit more. Let's plan on, mid next week. I'll organize something in the next day and try to get a good time for everyone. Maybe this time on Thursday, but maybe a little bit earlier if you want. All right. Cool. Well, there's a lot there, and standards are important, but even of the utmost importance is getting people to have just good hygiene regardless of the standards, and not allowing them to make really bad, stupid mistakes. Okay. Thanks. I'm trying to think where this conversation can happen organically over the next few days. Does anybody have a Discord channel? Key management?
I think that's a good bet.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Cool. I'll pop one of those up in a minute. Okay, thanks everyone. Great. Now we'll move on to client updates. We will start with Teku.
Right, that is me. So version 0.12 update is going well. BLS is done. Gossip sub 1.1 is done. Fork choice, state transition, validator changes are done. Just finishing off the remaining networking changes, and we'll be there. We've had a big focus on our memory footprint in the last sprint, and we've managed to reduce the remerkable memory use for hot states. And we've just merged a big rework and refactor that limits the number of states stored in memory and regenerates them as needed. So looking for some good improvements there. Other than that, mostly fixing bugs. I'll spare you the details. You can check our PRs if you're interested. Reducing the noise in our logs and improving usability generally. I think that's pretty much it.
Excellent. And I guess the memory footprint reduction is contextualized by the fact that, correct me if I'm wrong, the Java garbage collection will essentially expand the memory as much as you give it.
Yeah, we're talking a lot about how much you can trust the information shown on Eth2 stats, for example.
Right.
That reports a kind of whole usage of the Java process, but that's not reflective of what's actually being used and what Java will get out of the way if somebody else needs the memory. So it looks bad, but it's not in reality that bad.
Yeah, I gotcha. Yeah, and having run some of the various clients, it does seem like most clients are still slowly leaking or slowly growing over time, regardless of that. But cool, thank you. Nimbus.
Hey, So in the past 2 weeks, we had a few exciting changes. First of all, we made the block and attestation processing about 10 to 50x faster by caching a hash reroute. So it's not full remarkable. We took the easy part that didn't need too much refactoring or mutable state to get up to speed. We have the validator client split in progress. Also, we have our first PR on the core spec 0.12.x plus the BLS part, and you can toggle at compile time between Nimbus 0.11 or Nimbus 0.12, still defaulting to 0.11 so that it's easy to just do a make witty and connect to the testnet. We have EIP 2333 that is implemented or in PR. Also, the audit that will be over 4 months will start in 10 days. We'll have an announcement with all the detail plus or the firm that we will be engaging with. On the visualization side, we updated our Grafana monitoring so that it's a bit clearer to monitor a single node before you monitor the whole fleet. On the testnets, witty. We had some exciting news for mobile users. Now you can start Nimbus, have your computer or your phone sleep for a night, and on wake up, it will resync without any issue. Well, at least it did at least once. Now, on the technical guides, we have updated the guides to install Nimbus, in particular on phones. So what was changed in particular was that all setup and instructions were referring to the Go P2P daemon, but now you don't need to use Go or install Go at all. We have a few platform-specific bugs or regression. Bug one is on Windows 32-bit. I really hope no one is using that, but we are still testing Windows 32-bit because it's the best way in CI to test 32-bit platforms. And we have a regression on ARM64 that we are investigating. And otherwise, we had a lot of bug fixes, our async framework, libp2p, in particular memory usage and leaks. And that's all.
Great, thank you, Mami. And does Nimbus sync witty to head, or is there still the issue with getting to the list?
Yes, it is. When I was mentioning what's called the sleeping and on wake up resync, it was on witty. But there is one thing. We have an issue with the fork choice right now. We have the protocol fork choice that is being living in a PR, and somehow when we switch to it, we don't finalize anymore. And the fork choice that we are using right now is a guaranteed split if there is a tie break, because we are using the smaller hash as a tie break while everyone else is using the bigger hash. But it didn't happen yet. So
yeah, tiebreak is generally unlikely, but yeah, you'll be on your own for it. Okay, cool. Lodestar.
Hey, not too much exciting over the past 2 weeks. We're probably 2/3 of the way through the 0.12 update. I think the fork choice has been updated. The bigger thing that's still left is Gossip Sub 1.1. It's in progress. We're working with the JS libp2p team on that. We've been working on tooling to help us spin up ephemeral testnets just for our purposes. And as far as like syncing with the testnet goes, we currently, our initial sync is fairly stable, but we have a bug where we're not switching over
to gossip, or from like fetching blogs by range to fetching them by root and relying on gossip. And so we're working through that right now. And up and coming, we're going to be working on a validator CLI. We've been holding off because of this wallet versus key store kind of situation. So I'm sure once we get more consensus on that, we'll try to follow kind of a standard path towards that. Yeah.
Great, thanks, Cameron. Lighthouse.
Yeah, so we've been implementing 0.12.1 on a dedicated branch. We've been passing all our tests, but still a few more changes to add. Michael's been doing some great and thorough work on the state transition logic, and Kirk updated our BLS library to suit the latest standard changes. Paul's been busy rewriting our fork choice to match 0.12.1, and it's now fully separated into its own crate, which is good and makes it much easier to audit. He's actually raised two interesting issues with the spec. The first one removes a redundant database lookup, and the second one addresses an issue that can potentially lead to corruption of the fork choice store. It actually also removes a redundant function call. In other news, we've made our memory usage available to Eth2 stats. So not all Lighthouse nodes on Wiki have that update enabled, but for those who have it on, you can see that the optimization efforts over the past few months are definitely paying off. We are now natively supporting Raspberry Pis. Big thank you to an external contributor who managed to get level DB to build on ARM. We were waiting on that PR to be merged upstream for a while, and it's been done recently. So we've updated our docs to make it super easy for people to build on Raspberry Pis. Age has finished rebuilding disk V5. Some people were noticing massive CPU usage on Schlessi, and it's now completely resolved. We also have greater concurrency, pretty solid DOS resistance structure, and we no longer require ENRs for peer connection. We can just use multi-adders. And I guess finally, Trail of Bits have completed their first round of the external security review. They're just waiting on a few of our comments before releasing the report. I guess we're happy to say that they haven't found anything critical at this stage. They'll be performing a second review targeting the networking stack and the changes introduced since the first review. And we're also in the process of interviewing and selecting another security firm for a second independent review that should most likely take place closer to mainnet.
Great, thank you. Is the CPU fix, is that on Widi right now, or is that a stage for V012?
No, it's been merged to master a few days ago.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, not in Lighthouse yet.
Oh, there you go. I thought you merged it down to master. Apologies.
Yeah, sorry. There was an issue with the disk v5. We merged the disk v5 down into master, but it hasn't actually hit master in Lighthouse yet, so that's still coming.
Ah, sweet.
Gotcha. And the ENR versus multi-adder bit, we'll talk about that right after. But it's good to hear that y'all sorted through that. Prism.
Hey guys, so we aligned to spec version 12.1. We have shut down the Topaz testnet, relaunched the Onyx testnet with version 12.1. We're still 4,000 deposits away from the Genesis count. So from the looks of it, I think Genesis will be sometime Saturday afternoon Pacific time. We're also doing some sanity testing on multi-client compatibility with Onyx. So far we have tried Taku. We verified that it sees the Eth1 deposit the same way Prism does, so that's good news. We will try Lighthouse next. And if anyone's client is ready for 0.12, feel free to ping us. We'll be happy to launch it and then sanity test it. We now have offered peer Go support, so you can run Go get and start developing in your favorite test editor and then run Go tests and stuff. And lots of people are happy with this. We have full support of Nethermind and other Eth1 node implementation on Prism. So previously, Prism required access to both HTTP and then the WebSocket endpoint. So right now we refactor our Eth1 code to just use the HTTP endpoint. We added a few more debugging related RPC endpoints, such as you can query proto array for choice store, you can query individual validators vote status. So this should come in pretty handy for debugging. In the background, we're also working on revamping the validator key management. So like people said, we're researching the EIPs. We're studying how other clients do it and the current tooling landscape. We have been getting lots of feedback from users on that component. So the GUI UX is very important there. Other than that, just a bunch of minor bug fixes, code health improvements, and then optimizations. And yep, that's about it.
Great. Thanks, Terrence. And good to hear that Teku and Prism agree on Genesis time. Cool. Nethermind. Tomas, we cannot hear you if you are speaking.
Sorry, I was on mute.
That's it.
So the thing that I'm working now on is the Ethereum 2, Ethereum 1 integration in Nethermind. So both of them working on Nethermind and accepting deposits and the whole flow going through. And then I'll be updating also to the latest spec. So that's 0.12.1, I believe. And we start looking at some of the updates to the API. Yeah, so these are the main projects at the moment. And the testing, full testing, so we want to re-add all the tests to run them automatically. They were added at the beginning and then they were neglected. And now we have a person full-time on testing that will be picking up this project next week.
Great, thanks. And Trinity.
Hey everyone, let's see. So the main work over the last 2 weeks on Trinity has been spec updates to get up to 11.3. Grant's been working on that. Some work on looking at optimizations so that we can comfortably run the mainnet configuration, and working on implementing an efficient fork choice. We're looking at using the proto array implementation that seems to be pretty popular. And that's about it. While I have everyone here, I do want to also announce that we are working on a proxy contract for the deposit contract, basically to verify BLS signatures. And so if anyone wants to talk about that or help review the contract, just reach out to me offline after. I'll put a link in the chat.
Cool. Is this deployed to the YOLO testnet? Actually, is it the YOLT testnet now?
It's not deployed yet, but yeah, that was something I was looking at doing.
Nice. Cool. Okay, I think that's everyone on the client updates. Afri has an update. Afri, your mic's still not working? Okay. Schlesie's history. Afri purged the last validator in bootnode. Witty's been fairly stable, 100,000 slots. Liveliness is generally almost perfect, 75 to 90% validated participation. No major issues have been found. Altona, which is the V012 next testnet to be launched, expected to happen in the next week and a half, but right now there's still only one client that's like fully V012, that's Prism. So looking at, ideally, we could launch with 4 clients this time. Nimbus will be able to hope. Afri's confident that Nimbus will provide a Genesis validator as well. That said, moving forward, we'll invite the client teams for Genesis so they have a chance to run their own nodes at launch. So we have a little bit larger nets, a little more chaos. And I'm adding my own flavor to this. And if Altona works out, then we can prepare for, I won't say the word, but a larger scale public multi-client testnet. Okay, cool. Thanks, Afri. And moving on to the API working group update. Marin has really been leading this a lot. He wasn't able to join us on the call. His quick update is merge the /node namespace endpoints. There's open PRs on the /beacon/state and /beacon/pool endpoints. In progress is /beacon/blocks, and missing is the /config and the /validator endpoints. If you are interested in this stuff, there are two open PRs for review. They've gotten a little bit of review so far. I'm going to take a look at them today and likely merge them very soon. And again, keep your eye out for, as you review, things that are difficult to implement and things that you know people need to be able to do, and it would be difficult for them to do. That would be a signal that something is not so elegant or something is missing in this API. But in terms of timeliness, completeness, I think that we generally have the roadmap for kind of the space V1, and that most of it, likely by the end of next week, would be in this repo. And at that point, we can kind of go back and forth if there's any continued issues, but we can do, we can do a release and call it a V1. As for remaining discussion points, which Ben pointed out, I am not quite sure what other points are currently being debated, but we'll, if there's anything contentious, we will drop it in the API Discord as a note for discussion. Great. Research updates. Anybody want to go?
Yeah. So myself, Dinkrad, some with the help of some academics and Justin and other people, have been looking at Virgil trees, which are and other basically alternatives to Merkle trees for state storage that have. And so I wrote an ETH research post that basically kind of specifies what the problem is about a couple of weeks ago. The problem is basically that you want something that has all the properties of a Merkle tree, so it's a commitment, it can point to a whole bunch of objects, you can make proofs for any objects. If a small piece of the data gets changed, then you don't have to recompute over everything to make proofs for kind of relative to the new commitment or the new state root, and so forth, except adding the requirements that we want witnesses to be compact. So with Merkle trees, witnesses are going to be about even well, right now they're just completely crazy, but even with optimal binary trees, and even it'll be somewhere over 700 bytes per object, which is a bit too much for comfort. The main kind of alternative to this so far has been the Kate commitment, which lets you have a 48-byte proof for basically an unlimited number of elements, except it has this kind of fatal flaw that if the data changes even slightly, then you have to do a huge recomputation over the data in order to be able to continue making proofs. And so we've been trying to figure out how to kind of move past that. And the more recent kind of direction that at least I've been going, and I mean, Dinkrad was there even ahead of me, as Virgil trees, which is basically a kind of Merkle tree style construction made out of Kate commitments. So basically a tree where the width might be something like, somewhere in between 256 and 16,000, haven't decided yet. And you would have a tree of these. And so you would make a proof by basically just having the same way you would make any other proof, except because the tree has a much larger width and because Kate proofs are single objects, the proof size would be basically something like 96 bytes per element is looking likely. So I mean, still evaluating this, but it's also a potential candidate to replace things. even Merkle tree, binary Merkle trees
It's just
in
that
the
you
context of
split up the state space into subsets and make a Kate commitment of each of those and then Merkleize them.
Right. Well, you can do multiple layering of subsets, right? So like I would probably favor 3 layers. So the width of each commitment would be like say 2048, and then you'd have 3 layers, 2048 to the 3. You'd basically have space for 8 billion elements.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Cool. That's it.
There's a small bug fix from when process slots was refactored. Thanks to Alex Lasser for catching this, and I just made a pull request for that fix. It's a small one. You can check it out in the chat.
And this is in the fork choice.
Yep, this is a fork choice bug.
And is this, does this affect normal or is this an exceptional case? I haven't looked at this yet.
It prevents certain target checkpoints to be added to the store. Basically, the ones which haven't been pulled up. So when you're getting blocks every slot, and you could just cross an epoch, it prevents those targets from being added to the store.
Gotcha. Okay, I'll take a look after. Thanks. And thanks, Alex. Any other research updates? Okay. Great. Networking. Age, you managed to get connected to DISV5 with multi-adders. Was there any substantive changes that needed to be made, both either to the protocol or to your implementation?
The spec supports it, but yeah, the implementation. So it's an implementation specific, I guess. We had some issues with our CPU usage now, so we pretty much just kind of refactored everything. We kind of rebuilt it from the ground up so it can support it. I think you can only support inline peer key, like peer IDs, so like SEP256K1 and ED25519 keys. But we're using those anyway, so you can do it. Yeah, you just have to. I'm not sure how it's implementation specific.
Okay. I think the UX around passing multi-adders here for direct connection to boot nodes and direct connections is valuable. So if you want some insight on how to do it, chat in Discord. Any other networking items? Great. General spec discussion, anything here? Okay. And open discussion, closing remarks, anything anyone has. Cool. Okay. Well, we will have another one of these in 2 weeks. We will get an API, not API, key management discussion on the calendar, and otherwise run some testnets soon. Thanks, everyone.